Welcome to Three Skulls Tavern, a channel devoted to tabletop role-playing games by Free League Publishing. This show is sponsored by WorldMill, online server hosting for the Foundry virtual tabletop. To support the show, head over to patreon.com/MattK. For a minimum of $2 per month, you get access to a ton of extra content. Hello. I'm Matt, back to talk about my Forbidden Lands solo campaign. We had a wrap up last week with the finale, and I wanted to do a little bit of an epilogue to talk about my thoughts on the campaign, tool set for the that I was using for it in terms of Foundry and solo tools. Going forward with the second season, what I'm going to be doing there, etc. So if you haven't watched my final episode from last week, spoiler alert, I'm going to be talking about it a fair amount here, so you might want to stop the video here if you're watching this in the future. If you're on the live stream and you're coming in late, sorry about that, because I'm going to be talking about how that campaign ended. Yeah, and this is all taking the context of this video as well is quite interesting, because Free League have just wrapped the Kickstarter for their Blood March and the Book of Beasts Kickstarter campaign. And one of the final stretch goal in that was to produce solo tools for Forbidden Lands. So these would be official tools. We don't know what that's going to look like yet. There was a live stream that just finished, or is I think just finishing now, for that campaign, and they were talking about that solo mode was the final stretch goal. It got unlocked like within the last 30 minutes or so, last hour of the campaign, of the Kickstarter campaign, I should say. So that's definitely coming, and yeah, the only confirmation we've had about it so far is that it's going to be replacing a GM, so having some sort of GM emulator, and it's going to provide more tables to allow for more rolling for random stuff. That's the only thing that Free League were able to confirm about it. So they haven't developed it yet. They've only just come up with adding it in as a stretch goal, really within the last day or so. So all that they said that they've done is they've talked about it internally about whether this is something they could do, and if they could do it justice, and they decided they could, and have decided to add it in. So I think more than that, they haven't really come up with it. It doesn't sound like they've come up with a huge plan on how that's going to be implemented exactly. So we'll have to wait and see what comes out of that. But that is really exciting news for this campaign, because that effectively means I could be using some official. I will be using the official Forbidden Lands solo tools if they are released in time for whenever I start running Season 2. So that out of the way, let's have a quick talk about the campaign, about Season 1. Now, it ended on quite a bit of a cliffhanger, and I did debate whether I would have a final episode to just tie up some loose ends there, but I think that could make for some interesting gameplay regardless. And yeah, we'll see what happens there, but there's a lot of interesting things happening. I've created a village using the village generator in from the book, but there's a module in or not a module, there's a macro in Foundry which lets you click this macro button, like a single button, click it on your macro toolbar, and it generates automatically, using the tables from the book, a village. So I've done that, created the village of Thornhill, created an NPC for who's ruling the place, and came up with a few little bits and pieces about it. And I'm quite excited because that's going to be the starting point for Season 2, is this village. And where Season 1 was a lot of trekking across a hex map and trying to figure out, how, in a way, it was almost how far can I get these characters without them dying, because I didn't expect it to even last for 10 episodes like it did, to be honest. And of course, we know that Udo nearly perished along the way, etc. But really, I was mostly interested to see how far they could get with just basically two players. or 2 PCs, I should say, with 1 player, me. And yeah, that was a very interesting experience. There was a lot of survival, like solo survival play going on in there. There wasn't a lot of solo NPC interaction. So Season 2 is going to be starting with a very different like focus. It's going to be much more focused on, I think, intrigue and social interplay, etc. And I mean, this all depends on what comes out of Free League officially for supporting solo play. But if it is fairly bare bones and it's just a GM emulator and some tables, I've got some ideas on how I might myself play around with some elements like social interactions and things, just to make it a little bit more solo friendly. But we'll see how that goes. What I'm thinking might require a complete rewrite of the NPC stats in Foundry, so it might not be something I would go for. Just trying to think about how to simplify things a bit, so I'm not doing opposed roles all the time. But yeah, that's something I'm very much looking forward to, and I don't know if Udo and Yubi are going to survive, you know, very much past the first episode. The first episode, I think, is mainly going to be focusing on whether Udo survives or whether he gets healed, whether Yubi herself survives, whether everyone else in the village survives, because they basically have a demonic plague that Yubi has brought kicking off, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Interestingly enough, I rolled up for Thornhill with the NPC that the goal for the leader, who is a despot, who's also intolerant, so she's a bit of a I guess she's a bit of a hard character and not a very fair one, but her goal is that she wants to spread faith. So there might be some interesting elements at play there based on it being a demonic plague. And yeah, there's just a lot of ideas I've got for this going forward. I've had some comments in the last episode, in the YouTube comments for ideas on the ways it could go, etc. So keep them coming. You can leave them in this video as well, by the way, if you've got any interesting ideas for Season 2. But really, I'm just very much looking forward to... I have been looking forward to how that whole social element is going to go. The intrigue that's involved with this small village. There are night wargs that are plaguing the village. People have gone missing. And yeah, there's just a lot of interesting things happening. So I'm very much interested in that. And now that we're definitely getting a solo mode for Forbidden Lands, which has really only just been a thing in the past 24 hours or so since it was announced, is also very cool, because that kind of really shakes up, you know, what I was thinking about doing for Season 2. And I guess that's where I really wanted to shift and talk about now. You know, I wanted to look at the tools that I'd been using. I wanted to reflect on how, you know, how good they were in practice, you know, how I would tweak them, things I could improve, etc. And the first place I wanted to start talking about was I'm going to switch over to Foundry, actually, on my screen. So give me a second there while I just do that. Yeah, so if you look at the bottom here, I have all these different generators, like macros for generating things, and one of them is my dice roller here. I click on that, and the default that it comes up to with how I've got it set up is rolling 6 base die, or 6 base dice, I should say. And if I open up my GM screen here, and we look down here at the bottom, I've got this encountered oracle. And this was the core of the game, really, for the solo game. You know, I was rolling 6 base die and basically using the 6s and the 1s, the skulls and the swords, to cancel each other out, and that would generate a yes or no answer. And I was also using it for encounters. So, do I have a random encounter in this hex? Is what the question I would ask the oracle. I would roll the 6 dice, and the results would play out there. And I was able to kind of tweak that a little bit by adding in a free success if the likelihood was a little bit more likely, or adding in a failure if it was a little bit less likely. And it worked in practice. It just felt a little bit clunky, I think, because I was I'd have to go in and click a couple of clicks to get it to run. Then it would give me a roll. It would give me a dice output, and I would have to try and interpret that output based on, okay, so it's let's count out how many things are being like canceled out, whatever. Okay, it's giving me this result. That means this. So there's a little bit of it, just kind of slowed things down a little bit. And a suggestion was made that I think by Tony, my editor, video editor for this series, that it might be slicker to just have a macro that automatically rolls on a table of results and outputs that. And that's a really good suggestion. And that is probably what I'm going to do going forward. So the way I'm likely to do this is I'm probably going to look at a range of probabilities for getting answers like yes, but, yes. As you can see on the screen in the bottom corner here, I've got these various different results. And rather than rolling the 6 dice, I can still always revert back to rolling 6 dice. It's easy enough to do. I might just replace that with what are called roll tables in Foundry, and just have a macro that says, yes, no oracle. I click the macro, it comes up with the kind of likelihood of the thing, whether it's likely, 50-50, or unlikely, and that gives me different results that are skewed in one direction or another. And it will just randomly roll on this table of however many entries I put in there, and spit out an answer. And this is actually the exact macro I have set up in our Twilight 2000 campaign, our co-op campaign. That uses a deck of cards, and I've put that deck of cards oracle as a roll table, and you just click it and it spits out the result. So really I could just take that exact same oracle, pick it up, and stick it into Forbidden Lands, maybe tweak it a bit if I wanted to, and that would just speed up things quite a lot. And I'd just have to come up with a reason for if I'm asking about a random encounter, I'd have to think of how to include adventure sites in that, and I think that would be relatively easy to do. I would just have it on an extreme, either on an extreme no or an extreme yes. Is there a random counter in this hex? Probably on an extreme yes. Yes, there is, and it is an adventure site. Because that happens doesn't happen very often. It only happens on 2 of the possible 52 cards that are drawn. Maybe only even on 1. I can't remember exactly. So yeah, that's something I've been thinking about changing. So that's one thing that's gonna be adapted for Season 2. If the official GM emulator for Forbidden Lands is not finished by then, and if if it is released and there is no yes or no oracle in it, then I would include that. However, they did also say on the live stream that just finished that they mentioned Twilight 2000 solo rules, so I imagine they might be doing something similar to that anyway. Just looking in the chat. I just wanted to say hi to Dirigo, Fenhorn, and Jason. I remember all 3 of you were in the watching the live stream from Free League, so thanks for coming across here. Exciting news. So yeah, those are if you got any questions, by the way, from me on soloing Forbidden Lands or the campaign or things you want me to talk about, just drop them in the chat and I'll see them. But anyway, changing the yes/no oracle is something I definitely want to do. There's some other things I kind of wanted to talk around, and these are things that I found, things I found a little bit not so smooth in solo play. One of them is to do with combat, and I know my one big combat was with a monster, and I was rolling poorly the whole time. I wasn't really trying to engage with it. I was trying to run away the entire time. So it's possibly not a good reflection on how a kind of standard combat with perhaps NPCs or animals or that sort of thing. I did fight a wolf once, and that did go fairly quickly. But I did think that I wasn't too satisfied with how combat runs out of the gate with Forbidden Lands. So there's some things I'm thinking about changing up for that as well. One of them, let's talk about initiative. Now, initiative didn't really matter too much, because the 3 times combat were initiated was with the Great Insulter. A wolf attacked me in a camp, and then I had a monster attack. All of them was me or my party, so me and Yubi, against a single foe. And with the monster, I did not draw multiple initiative cards. But that means I was only drawing 3 initiative slots for everyone. However, I want to simplify this. I don't want to have a full-blown tactical combat playing solo because it's just a lot to keep track of, and really I want the story to keep going. I still want it to be kind of tactical and everything else, but I think there's some kind of ways I can keep the system more or less as is, but really streamline things. And the way I'm going to do that going forward, I'm thinking about doing that going forward, is the following ways. Initiative would be the first one. I'm going to take away this view very quickly because I'm not really talking about Foundry at the moment. There we go. So initiative is the first one, and with initiative, I'm only going to be drawing for two sides: my party and the bad guy's party. If there are talents on my side that allow me to draw multiple initiative cards, I will draw them when I'm drawing for me. And likewise, if there's a talent on the opposing side that allows that, I will draw multiple times from them, and it'll keep the highest card. And that way, I'm only ever keeping track of two initiative slots: me and the bad guys, and me being me and Yubi. Or if I have somebody else in my party, it's gonna be everybody that's on my side and everybody that's on their side. That's gonna speed things up with having to track that a lot, but still keep it random with the initiative cards. The second thing I'm going to do is, as much as possible, I'm going to try and use my companion or companions to do like help or assist maneuvers during combat. So rather than tracking me and Yubi separately, it might be that it makes sense to track them separately and to have, like in the monster attack, Yubi was in the trees firing her arrows at the bear. That kind of worked, but in the wolf attack, for example, that would have made a lot of sense for Yubi to have given me an additional assist die while I was attacking the wolf. That keeps the focus more on a single PC, and keeps the companions kind of in the wings as a support character and not their own character in and of themselves. So that was a big thing I think I want to change. Likewise with foes. If I have multiple foes that are of the same type, this is actually in one of the first pages of the GM's guide. It talks about grouping NPCs together and using the help die, having them all do the same action and helping each other. And that's something I would definitely lean very hard into in combat to make things just a bit faster and not having to, not just because I'm streaming, but also because when you're doing solo play, I'm not personally so interested in the really tactical, drawn-out combats for Forbidden Lands. It will still be deadly, it'll still be harsh, and it will still be this sort of the main tactical combat that is already there. It's just that I'm not going to have to crunch through multiple people one at a time to figure out what's happening. So I think that's kind of the main thing I want to do. Fenhorns just asked, no feint action then. I mean, sure, feint action could happen, and it would swap the initiative slots, but I'm probably not going to use it at all. I've never really used it myself, and it only really makes sense if you have lots of different cards kind of on the table with people swapping initiative slots around. So probably not. Forbidden Hero, so Robin, hi Robin, says, Forbidden Hero, which is the set of solo rules I have, has icons for open questions as well as the yes-no oracle. How did you work these? I didn't use them. I used the Ironsworn action and theme oracle, which for me I like a lot better. So kind of a personal taste thing. I'm a big fan of Rory's story cubes. I have a huge amount of them myself. I use them with my son to do some storytelling games kind of together. He rolls some of the dice, and I kind of make a story based on the icons that come up. And now that he's getting older, he's also kind of doing his own stories with me. So I'm quite happy with working off of imagery to kind of work out something. But I find so basically the Forbidden Hero icons, there are 36 of them because it's tied to a D66 table. With Ironsworn, there are 100 actions and 100 themes, so you have a huge number of possible connections with those two as they're drawn together, and I just like them a lot more. I'm familiar with Ironsworn. I've played Ironsworn in the past, and really it just works a lot better, and it flowed, not flew. It flowed really well as I was playing. So I used them a few times. I didn't use them all the way through, but when I needed them, they worked really well. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about combat. I've got some other ideas about it, but they're not they're all kind of in the idea stage at this phase. Again, I mentioned that I've been thinking about shaking up like my companions and NPC stats potentially. That's one thing I was thinking about, but I mean, it would require a lot of work in Foundry to make it compatible, and I'm not sure it's worth the effort when in Foundry I can just kind of click a button and everything's rolls. But I have actually been thinking a lot in the past couple of weeks about Forbidden Lands and running it solo because last weekend, a friend of mine who lives in the same village as me and is a gamer. He's not a role player. He's done like one role-playing game ever, but does a lot of like video games, and he's been into war games. He was into Warhammer, like the tabletop game, the war game, and I kind of fielded like whether he would be interested in trying out role-playing with me, and like if I started up a local group. And he was very much on board very quickly, and we had a chat about finding other people in the local area. And I live very, very rurally. There aren't a lot of people nearby. Neither of us could think of anybody to ask offhand to have like a standard normal group with a GM and everything. So I pitched to him, why don't we run Forbidden Lands co-op, no GM, the two of us. And he was interested in that. So it looks like I'm going to be running it in person, using one of my maps with the stickers and everything, finally. And I'm quite excited about that. And it just made me think about, okay, what is it that I'm doing in Forbidden Lands on Foundry that are going to be hard to replicate in person? Because I'm not going to have all these cool tools. I don't want to have a laptop with Foundry open to like randomly generate stuff. Although it might be that I use some like random generating tools like from a phone or something. So yeah, I've been thinking a lot about these things and like speeding up combat and, you know, etc., etc. And yeah, anyway, so combat is a big thing. Combat is a big thing to think about because it's very deadly. It's kind of designed around having really, I think, 4-ish players, you know, as the group. And it's not really designed around solo play. So for me, it's more about thinking about how to streamline things. In terms of deadliness, I already did it for the Grey Bear in the campaign, but I think for solo play, I would always have monsters only having a single initiative slot. Unless I was somehow, like, I had a really advanced character who was, I don't know, like, if one of my characters survives into getting lots of XP, lots of cool talents, becomes a combat, you know, monster themselves, and has some companions who are quite capable in fighting. I don't see that happening because that's not my preferred way of playing. But if that was to happen, then yeah, then I would maybe think about having monsters have a second initiative slot, drawing 2 initiative slots for them. But as it stands, I think I will always, and would recommend to people playing Forbidden Lands solo, do not do multiple initiative cards for monsters, especially not initially as you're playing, just because it's going to be deadly enough fighting a monster with just 1, maybe 2 players. So just reading through the chat very quickly, Fenhorn said in his solo combats in Twilight 2000 he's just done, he ended up with groups of people, just like I said. It made combat a lot smoother. Yeah, I've heard that for Forbidden Lands too. There was some discussion in my I also did what's called a guided Forbidden Lands campaign on the channel last year, where I was the GM and we had 4 players, and that was some feedback in one of the tavern talks we did, talking about doing that a bit more, like having groups of NPCs helping each other rather than each going separately. Dirigo says, I need to figure out this solo stuff for analog use. I'm a computer illiterate and prefer to unplug when possible. I've just talked about that a little bit. And actually, I've got some stuff I can show off here, since I've got a video here. I've got the GM screen. I don't know if you've got the GM screen yourselves. I don't really find a lot of the tables that useful, so I've actually started sticking stuff onto it. So on this side here, which has a list of you know, melee weapons with their bonuses, damage, range, etc., but no cost, so you can't really use it as a shopping list. I don't really use that because I tend to put the stat blocks for the weapons. I tend to have them written down with the characters when I was GMing. So I've just created this big list of it's a D66 result down the side, so you can see that there are 6 rows. So 11 to 16, 21 to 26, etc. And they are separated into, the columns are for different kin, names for different kin. I've got humans, and this is actually for Nord Saga. I used this when I was demoing Nord Saga at a convention. Nord Saga is a game that I'm designing, which is going to use a Forbidden Lands system, heavily tweaked, but basically in like a Norse, an alternate history Norse setting. But I can use a lot of these because, you know, they're quite compatible with Forbidden Lands in terms of theme. I can just use those names if I wanted to. So I'll be using that probably when we're playing to generate NPC names. I've summarized all of the combat stuff, which are currently spread across 2 panels here. I've summarized them all into a single panel here, which I will stick there, which reduces 2 panels down to 1. And then for here, I'm going to actually stick on... And let me just show that. In fact, let me go back to Foundry, because I'll show you what I'm using in Foundry. Give me a second. So in Foundry, I have this thing here, this journeying summary thing, and this is based on a user on Reddit shared this, and I've actually printed this off, as you can see here, right? I printed the thing off, and I'm gonna ignore the top half here, and just the bottom half, the stuff that you're looking at here, these quarter-day activities. They're nicely arranged, so I can cut them into thirds, right? Into like squares, basically. You've got this, my first square here, second square here, and third square here, and it fits. If I do that and I tape them in separately on that second panel that I've freed up with all the kind of putting the combat stuff together, they'll fit really nicely. You can see here, like just the two rows on this thing here. They'll fit there, 1, 2, 3, underneath each other. They can overlap a bit. I'll just tape the tops of them down so they overlap. And there I have a summary of all of the journeying actions, also on the GM screen, which again I have open in front of me. So that's really useful as well. And then the last stuff I was thinking about was creating somehow a... well, I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I've got some various different... workshop PDFs. One is called like Ravenland Weather, and this is something you can actually see it on Foundry here in the background here. So I'll just show you this thing here. And this, if I show it to you on the paper like this, it's got 3 hex flowers for 3 different kind of like seasonal groupings. One is for winter, one is for summer, and the third one is for the kind of like liminal months like spring and autumn that are kind of in between the two. And I can cut those out, and I can stick them on my GM screen so I can quickly roll, and I'll just stick one on for the relevant season that we're in, and I can replace that with a different season if we move along. And tying into that, I could also put on the GM screen, this is from another, I'm actually going to look this up because this is a really handy reference to have. There's another like calendar-based workshop module which has all the months in this really nice format here, as you can see here. And in fact, I've got it here on Foundry. I can show it in Foundry what it looks like. It's under calendar. So you can see here this like fall wane, winter rise. In fact, if I get rid of the fall wane one because that's gone now, and I change this to be 2 rows. I've got rid of one accidentally. Yeah, oops. So it's kind of shuffled everything around a little bit, but this is what it looks like, right? And when you print that off, you can actually there are four kind of grids in there: morning, daytime, evening, and night, and it's automatically shading them based on daylight hours. So in winter, only the daytime is daylight. So that's really handy kind of reference to have. And you can just basically, as you're going through, you can just kind of like tick off, put an X in each of those for each day, and you have an easy way of tracking time and the day, rather than doing what I was doing here and having this thing down here, right? Because it's all right there. So I've printed that off, and I'll probably stick that onto my GM screen, and I will just tick off quarter days as we use them. And it's also tracking the day of the, it's not only got days of the, days of the week at the top here, it's also got moon phases, it has, holidays written on them, all that kind of stuff. So that's really kind of quite useful. And I was going to look up which workshop item that is, just to recommend it. So give me a second while I do that. It's called, Oh, I just saw it. No, it's not there. Damn it. It's got the word Raven's Reckoning. Raven's Reckoning is what it's called. It's very good. And at the back of Raven's Reckoning, it's got all the calendars at the front, and at the back it has this nice little tracker you can print off. And this actually has it has morning, day, evening, and night. It has like little notes that you can write down next to it, and you put the location at the top there. You put the year at the top, the date, whatever you want, date for each of these little sections here. So each of it has like different days. This one can keep 5 days on a page. The notes section is pretty small, so I might actually take this as inspiration, redesign it a little bit to have the notes section be a little bit bigger. But this is tracking, I think it's quarter hours, because one, if you think that the day is split into 4 quarters, that's 6 hours per quarter, and on this we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've got six like squares of 4 per quarter day. So that's splitting an hour into fourths. So it's basically 15. You can chop things into 15-minute chunks here if you wanted to. And that's just like a really nice visual way to kind of do that. I would probably redesign this shrink this side of it and maybe only track them in hours. So I'd have like six boxes here. I think tracking quarter hours is a little bit, I wouldn't do it like that personally. And I would want more space for notes. So just write like, something that happened on that day in the notes on the side. And that'd be a nice little kind of journal, very, very simple journal to track what's been happening with the campaign as it goes. So in terms of analog tools, that's really all I'm planning on having. I'm planning on cutting out a lot of things, sticking them onto my GM screen. So having the GM screen open in front of me, having this little like journal sheet, which I will have in front of me on the table, and I'll kind of scribble it in and keep track of things like that. And yeah, that will probably work. So in terms of analog tools, that's kind of the way I'm starting to think. And there'll probably, as I actually play it, there might be some other things coming out. But so far, that's kind of where I'm at, what I've printed out, that sort of thing. So Dirigo, you're saying that you've got the GM screen in your Kickstarter pledge for Blood March, but that's going to be next year sometime probably. But you have other screens you can tape stuff to. So yeah, I would just say, find a 4-panel screen. And I mean, I'm literally reusing all 4 of my panels. So one panel has all the combat stuff summarized. One panel has all of your journeying stuff summarized. One panel has the calendar and the weather potentially summarized if you're interested in that. And the final panel I would just really use for a list of NPC names, because those are really useful, both as a GM coming up with. I'm very rubbish at coming up with interesting, inventive names on the fly. They all tend to being like, Ivan or Sven or Björn or something like that, like really stereotypical, Nordic names or Northern European names. So doing that in advance and going through tables. I really like creating name tables. I've done that quite often. And then I have a huge number of names that I can just look at and be like, oh, I like that one. This one fits. I don't rarely ever roll a die. I will just literally pick one off of the list, cross it off when I've used it, and kind of make a scribble of it. So if you have those 4 things on your panel, I think you're probably pretty good to go for Forbidden Lands Solo Analog, and then having some sort of a journal to track everything here. I am thinking of, so this is another thing I wanted to talk about. There's a couple of things. There's been such a huge amount of interest in this campaign on this channel and so many requests for me to share my Foundry tools that I'm definitely going to be doing that. I am currently looking at converting all of my tools in Foundry into an easy to package module that will be an official module in Foundry. So all you have to do is fire up Foundry, go to the modules and type in something like Forbidden Lands Solo Tools, and you will have a click of a button to install them, and then you'll have a little bit of work to to bring them, possibly a little bit of work to bring them into your game. In Foundry itself, you'd have to possibly go into your macro bar and just drag the macros onto your hotbar. But to try and make that as easy as possible for people, that's what I'm planning on doing. And there will be tables and stuff. Like when I do it, I'll have in the README for it details of how to go about
altering some of the tables. So if you don't like the name tables, or you want to use it for a different setting, you just go into the tables and you just replace it. You just replace the names or whatever. Or you don't like a specific entry, you can change that. Really trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. So that's one thing I'm planning on doing. The second thing I've been thinking about doing is putting together my thoughts on how to do Forbidden Lands solo after having played this campaign of it. And I've played and run a ton of Forbidden Lands myself as well, so I'm quite familiar with the system. And I think, although Forbidden Hero is good and I've been using it, I think I could do something that's a little bit more useful for people who are playing Forbidden Lands and is a little bit more tailored to the game itself, with more oracles, and things like that. So I guess watch this space, and it might be that those two things come out to complement each other. So whatever I come up with in a theoretical solo guide would also match the Foundry module that I'd be creating for it as well. So you could basically use my PDF that I would be producing on the workshop, and you could use that correspondingly with the Foundry module. So yeah, wait and see what happens there. I'm still working on it behind the scenes. I've got a lot of other stuff on my plate at the moment I'm trying to finish up. But so it's probably a few weeks away still, at least. But I'm trying to get all that kind of pulled together and sorted out as quickly as possible. Just reading through the comments very quickly. Robin gave me the name Raven's Reckoning while I was looking it up, so thanks for that. Yeah, Dorigo, you're asking if the Forbidden Lands screen is worth it. I collect, I basically get everything that Free League produce for their games, including GM screens. I don't personally think the GM screen is that good, but GM screens are very hard to get right for everyone. Everyone's tastes are different. Everyone's going to need different tables, and it's almost impossible to do. Certainly, if you're new to the game, 3 of the 4 panels are all about combat. Which skills tie to which attributes, how social conflict works, etc. And then, but like having the melee weapons, the ranged weapons, and the armor and helmets taking up nearly 2 full panels, to me wasn't really something that I found too useful. But if you think about if you look at the book and you open up the book and you look at the stats for any of the NPCs, they have a listing for a weapon, but there are no stats for that weapon. So if you're not familiar with the rule set and you see somebody has a broadsword, or they have a mace, or they have an axe, if you don't know what those stats are offhand, you're going to need to look them up. And that's where the GM screen can be quite useful. And again, in my GM prep, when I was running it, I would look at the things that like those hex they were in. If there's anything they're coming up to, I would pre-roll my my encounters in advance. And I would stick them into my GM notes along with stats for all the weapons, so I'd have them to hand. So I wasn't using the GM screen for that. So if you're not, I mean, for solo, you probably wouldn't be doing that because you don't know what's going to come up. And if you're referencing like an NPC in the book, that's going to be a problem. So the GM screen could really help you out there. If you're using Foundry, you really don't need the GM screen at all whatsoever, because everything you need in Foundry is right there to click away. Yeah, thanks for the review of the GM screen. Yeah, I wasn't planning on doing that, but if it comes up, it comes up. Yeah, so I didn't want to make this video too long. I think those are the main things I've been thinking about. Those are the main things I really wanted to discuss. I can't really think of any other tools I want to talk about. There are some other ideas I have for solo play, but they're all really in the conceptual phase right now. I don't really want to, commit kind of promising anything right now. They're things I need to think a little bit more about. I've only been thinking about them for little snippets of time for the past week, or not even the past week, like half a week. Some of them are probably a bit bonkers and really, really rubbish to implement in practice. And really, it's just an idea of consolidating all these ideas I have together, thinking about how it will conform with what's already in Foundry, because I don't want to make a mountain of work for myself to completely, tweak Foundry so that it works for this ideal version of solo Forbidden Lands that I have. So I want to try and keep it as compatible as I can with what's in Foundry currently, because I would be using Foundry for my next solo game. But really just ways that I can tweak things, make things run a bit more smoothly. House rules for certain things, maybe around journeying or that sort of thing, so journeying goes a bit more quickly. Perhaps some modules that might improve the quality of life for my solo campaign, where things can be automated a bit better. So those are all things I'm looking at and figuring out, and yeah, I guess really within the next couple of weeks, if not next couple of months, I hope to have something pulled together, and I hope to have something out on Foundry. And once that happens, I'll probably do a video tutorial on a Thursday, live streaming it, walking through how to install, not just walking through how to install it, but I'll do like a walkthrough of showcasing the various things that go into it, how to install it, that sort of thing. And that way I can include that video link in the GitHub description, so people can, when they're looking at installing it, they can watch a video of me like walking through how to use it. Yeah, the only thing I haven't really talked about is Season 2, I guess, and what I'm thinking of beyond the initial start. Now, one of the cool things about Season 2 is that I have a whole village of NPCs that I can draw on for new PCs if Yubi and Udo don't make it. Or maybe they make it and I just want to change the focus of the campaign. That's something I can also do. And Yubi and Udo might just like... Maybe Udo decides, like, this is way too dangerous. I nearly died. I've barely left, Belagar, or whatever the halfling lands are called, where he started off. And Yubi also thinks, well, if Udo's throwing in the towel already, I'm not going off on my own. Or maybe I create a new adventure to become my main, and maybe Yubi kind of tags along with them and becomes my companion. Or maybe Yubi stays my main, as she has already become, and this new companion who would be quite, whatever, like this new adventure would become her companion. I don't know. But the exciting thing is that there are a lot of options with a village full of people. And the nice thing about having randomly rolled 2 smiths is that my... I'm going to show it on the screen here, because I may as well plug my own product, right? While I've got everyone watching. So forgive the plug, but here we go. I'm going to bring up PDF Exchange, which is my PDF reader, and I have this product on the workshop. There's a link. I think there might be a link in this video. If there isn't, I'll add it very quickly, but I think there isn't. So I'm going to add that to the link here, but it's called Forbidden Lands New Professions 1. And yeah, I've provided three new professions for the game: Artisan, Burglar, and Scion. Now, Burglar is one I'm using for Udo. Udo is a burglar, so I'm already using a new profession. I kind of was using it as a playtest. But I have an Artisan one, and that fits perfectly with a Smith. So, yeah, if there are 2 Smiths in this village, it might be that there's an apprentice Smith who wants to go off adventuring, or one of the Smiths themselves, for one reason or another, decides they're going to be an adventurer. In which case, I can use one of these to kind of look at playtesting it. I should also say I'm also playing in an online Forbidden Lands campaign myself. And I am playing an Artisan, so I'm getting lots of use out of this document I wrote. But yeah, I'll stop plugging now. Whoops. Where am I going? That's the one I wanted. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of it. Season 2, I don't really know where it's going to go. I have some ideas about, like, how I might handle NPCs as potential new PCs. Just really vague ideas kind of floating around. It helps that I've landed in a village where I have that option. It's obviously a goblin village, so any option I'm going to come up with is likely to be a goblin. And I'll probably still keep a companion of my own, so I'm likely to end up with a 2 goblin party if Udo doesn't make it, or Udo decides to throw in the towel. I don't know. So that'll be interesting to kind of go full goblin, possibly. And other than that, I don't know. I probably would. I haven't created any new legends since the beginning, since the first episode, or prep for the campaign. And really, you're supposed to do new legends more often around the campfire. Basically, it kind of advises in the book, do a new legend every time you're sat around a campfire. I don't really think that suits the tone of kind of mystery of this place, that everyone's got these legends that they're sitting on and they're kind of pulling out. But I like the idea that legends are generated every time you meet a new person, and when you meet new people and like spend some time with them, like sitting around a campfire, you'll share some gossip, you'll share some news, and the news for a lot of these people are the legends they hear about. So now that Yubi and Udo have entered this village, I'm kind of thinking that there might be another 1 or 2 legends that get fleshed out to add to the mix. And that'll be interesting in terms of seeing where things go forward. Hi Tony. Late because of kids, that's cool, I totally get it. And Dorigo, just before I end this stream, do you or anyone here think it's possible to solo with more than 1 or 2 PCs? Absolutely. It's just going to take you a lot longer to do it, and I don't personally like it. I like the focus on one character. Having the second character was actually turned out quite well here, mainly because it's needed, but I do want to kind of streamline things, as I've said, and really treat them more as a companion rather than as a separate PC. Just because I think that slowed things down a little bit, and you can still have all of the role play with having that second companion and companion PC. But when it comes to mechanics and stuff, because I had a full character sheet and I was treating Yubi as a full PC, it kind of slowed things down a little bit. So I think that's something to bear in mind if you're going to play with more than 2 PCs. And you basically want to run like a standard game with 4 players or whatever, 4 player characters, and just no GM, it's just going to take a little bit longer to do certain things like combat if you're not thinking about ways of streamlining it. And you're going to be rolling a lot of dice for things. You're going to water down a little bit of the experience, I think, as well. With one of the whole things with solo play is that because you're focusing normally on one player, you really get a much more intense experience, a much more intense story out of it. If you have lots of players in a party, you tend to focus less on the personal stories, and it becomes more of a board gamey approach to the thing, I'd like to say. So it's quite common you find for solo people who do solo games like Dungeons and Dragons or some of the OSR stuff. A lot of them do whole parties. They do a solo game with whole parties, but they tend to be very, very combat focused, or they'll run through like a mega dungeon or something like that, where the kind of social side of things or the roleplay side of things are a little bit in the background. I mean, obviously it depends on who's running it, and you can of course have a roleplay heavy game with multiple PCs, but it's a little bit harder to do, I would suggest. So yeah, I would never run Forbidden Lands just with one character unless I was running some really badass like champion or something, and treat them as like a veteran with a bunch of extra talents and stuff just to make them a little bit more survivable out of the gate. But even then it would be really hard because of like the survival element, not just the combat elements, but the survival elements would be just a bit of a pain in the arse, really. So yeah, that's my views on multiple PCs. And with that, I'm going to end. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for the comments in the chat. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe and like buttons, as that really helps the channel to grow. I'm recently over 1,000 subs, so that's really makes me really happy to know that the channel has grown like that in just a year and a half. And yeah, there will be more content on Forbidden Lands in the future. I will probably be doing some of these sort of live stream additional content kind of videos, behind the scenes sort of videos in future. But otherwise, really, the game won't be starting until probably sometime next year, season 2, I should say, because in between I'm going to be starting the One Ring solo campaign on the channel. And I've talked about this a little bit in the past, so I won't go into it too much here. But yeah, if you really like the Forbidden Lands solo stuff and you want to see more of it, follow the channel, and sometime next year we'll be starting up season 2. But please follow anyway my the One Ring solo campaign. I'm hoping I've got some really cool ideas for that. I'm only going to have one PC in that game. I'm not going to run it with multiples. I'm not going to have a second companion. I'm not thinking about doing that anyway. And I'm going to basically either be creating a Bjorning, I should say, or a like a typical ranger, like Strider kind of.
So those are two characters that really make a lot of sense wandering around Eriador by themselves, and can just be a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to that as the next thing. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. And if you want to follow me on social media, check out all the links here in the ticker down below, where you can find links to my social media channels. I'm very, very active on Discord, so if you want to hit if you're a Discord user, type that into your browser and join there. But that's me. So thank you very, very much, and I'll catch you next time.